So yeah, I'm asking for reconsideration of my vote. I became aware of some information regarding Ms. Scarpa that I was not aware of at the time I made my vote. I'd like to clear up some miscommunication and some misinformation that's been spread and some about longstanding traditions and optics and council member rights and all that good stuff. I'll just remind everybody it was a quick 4 short years ago when I became a council member that the appointment process was changed right before I got to make my appointments, and I actually had no appointments at all for my first 4 years. That was taken from me. Councilmember Morgan and I were the only ones that said no to that. So it would be super easy for me out of revenge to be up here in retribution to do something, but that's not what this is. There was a list on the application that said, do you have any conflicts of interest? While Ms. Scarpa may not feel that they're conflicts of interest, I actually do. There are things I believe that this is not I can't in good conscience confirm Mr. Winslow's appointment. I'm also not suggesting that Mr. Winslow doesn't get an appointment. I would ask that we allow him to make another appointment of the list of 8 or 9 people that applied, or I will just register my no vote and we can move on.
All right. So from here, we go to public comment, I would assume.
We have questions for...
Sure. Questions would be appropriate. Go ahead.
Yeah, would you care to explain, you've alluded to conflicts of interest and the new information coming up. Could you explain?
Yeah, I just think that having somebody who's been the CFO, CEO of a company that's sued the city, that has sued builders directly, I think when people come before the Planning Commission, they should have a fairly non-partisan, non-biased person to be able to make their argument to, and I'm just not sure. My belief is that they may not be able to get that. So that's my belief, and I get to have a vote, and that's what I'm voting.
Right, yeah. So we received, by correspondence, a blog post, a local blogger wrote. Rob Berry wrote a blog explaining some of these things. Northern California Environmental Defense Center is the organization, it's a nonprofit organization in question. Is that your source for the information that you received? I'm
unaware of his blog post, and this request was made over a month ago, so
Right. He mentioned some of the same language like optics in this blog post. I could.
Optics actually came from Mr. Tutinsky from the ER is where the word optics came from. Okay, so I'm responding to what he said.
Yeah.
At the news article after I asked for this, but I'm actually not here to argue about it with you. I'm just asking to change my mind.
No, that's great. It's a public discussion on a public matter here. I'm just going to address this blog post because that's the most comprehensive explanation of what the issue is here that we have. We received it by email. It makes just a wide variety of accusations and speculations from who's my girlfriend to what board of what organizations do I and Maggie Scarpa sit on. The main claim in there, which I assume is what you heard, is that Maggie Scarpa was listed as the CFO of the Northern California Environmental Defense Center, a nonprofit environmental advocacy group that's been engaged in litigation in the past with the city. That she was listed on there at a certain tax filing, and then that I was listed on there at an additional tax filing, and seems to assume that we're both sitting on the board of that organization, and then makes the question of why wasn't this disclosed in the application. And there's a very simple answer to that. It's not normal, Mr. Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, to disclose as a conflict of interest the organizations you have previously participated in. Maggie Scarpa, for one, I happen to know very well, and I know that she left the board of that organization after becoming long-range planner for Yuba County. This was well over a year ago, say a year and a half ago, and I left the board of the organization before I ran for council, so neither of us sit on that organizational board. They were engaged in lawsuits against the city. Some of those have settled against there's a Stonegate development, which narrowly passed the Planning Commission and the City Council, and the Birch Road expansion. And both of these are climate change related. They were not frivolous lawsuits. The city did engage in a settlement, and they owe attorney fees for that. But they're not frivolous. If we're setting a standard that being involved in an organization that's engaged in litigation against the city at any point disqualifies you for public office, one, I would be disqualified, right? Because I was also on the board of that organization. The other, we would then be expanding that to all members of the Sierra Club. I don't know if we want to get to the point of that. because environmental advocacy is the reason that people get involved in politics. The reason that you apply for the planning commission or run for city council is being involved with these sort of things. So I want to fill in that information, because clearly reading the blog post, I see that there's a lot of assumptions made based on some things you're able to Google, but it's not really the truth behind it. And I think we ought to have a frank discussion of all these things before the public comes up with comment. So even Maggie Scarpa herself knows what she is being accused of here and why she's considered unqualified for office. So.
So I always prefer to speak for myself, and so I wrote the article that Addison referred to, and what I alleged was bad faith. And bad faith is when you conceal a conflict of interest in order to achieve some end that serves your own purposes. So let me try to illustrate the point by asking you how you would feel if Addison served as an officer on Legal Services of Northern California and appointed Corey Turner to the Park Commission. Would that make you feel comfortable about the judgments that would be brought forward to the Parks Commission? So in this particular case, Maggie Scarpa served as CFO of this organization. She switched with Addison, who is now serving as CFO, and that organization, your name shows up on the statement of information filed with the Secretary of State. If that's incorrect, that is an issue in itself. So, and both you and Maggie and Bryce are on the Beck board, which has joined in the opposition to Valley's Edge.
Point of order, we can't talk about people that are in the audience, sorry.
Just let's keep comments limited to the topic.
Well, what I'm saying is that I'm talking about the association here. And so Addison was paid by Beck to write opposition to Valley's Edge. So that makes him
Guys, please, again. Mr. Barry, if you could limit your comments to the topic at hand.
It is the topic. The topic
Audience,
is,
if you could please control outbursts. Thank you.
Look,
go ahead.
Just because I'm being heckled by the audience doesn't mean I have to change the topic of my talk.
No.
What I'm saying here is that I'm alleging that this was an act of bad faith. And I'm demonstrating to you why it's an act of bad faith, because there's a conflict in the interest of these organizations and Addison's sworn duty to represent all citizens of Chico. And when he is faced with a conflict, hang on, you used some of my time.
Go ahead.
Let me finish my sentence. When you're faced with a conflict between loyalty to an outside organization and loyalty to the faith of your office, that is a conflict of interest.
Hey. Folks, no more outbursts or I'll just clear the room and you guys can come in and line up. Mr. Barry, that's fine. Thank you.
Is this allowed? Is this okay?
Mr. Barry, please take a seat. We are going to take a 10-minute recess. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to go from there. Are we not going to talk anymore?
Ma'am, we're taking a 10-minute break. Ma'am, you're interrupting this meeting. Sergeant at Arms.
No, just leave the room. It's just